Relax. You are not late, and you are not behind. The idea that you must always be somewhere else, doing something different, or achieving something faster is nothing more than an illusion we have built for ourselves. Life does not work on the rigid timelines we imagine. It moves in spirals, in waves, and in seasons. Every single step you have taken, whether you call it a mistake, a failure, or a success, has brought you to this very moment. And this moment is exactly where you need to be for what's coming next. You are not waiting for life to begin. Life is already here, breathing through you. It's easy to think that your journey is incomplete because of what hasn't happened yet. But that is like judging a sunrise while it's still climbing the horizon. The beauty of life is that it never reveals everything at once. There are pauses, there are setbacks, there are quiet moments that feel like nothing is happening, but these are not empty spaces. They are the ground where new beginnings quietly take root. Just as winter feels still and lifeless, yet beneath the frozen soil, the seeds are preparing for spring, so too is your life preparing for its next season. There is no need to fight the moment you are in. When you relax and stop struggling against the current, you begin to see that the river is not trying to drown you. It is carrying you to the exact place you are meant to be. Every ending you've faced, every door that has closed, was not a sign of failure, but a turning point towards something that was always meant for you. Life has a way of clearing the path when it knows you are ready for a new chapter, even if it means tearing down what you thought would last forever. You are not lost. You are exactly where life wants you, even if it feels uncomfortable or uncertain. The discomfort is not punishment. It is the signal that something new is being born. Think of the silence between musical notes. Without that pause, the melody would lose its beauty. In the same way, the space you are in right now is not empty. It's the pause that gives meaning to the next movement of your life. There is no rush to reach the future. The beginning you are waiting for does not start when you arrive at some distant goal. It starts now, right where you are. You don't need to have everything figured out or have the perfect plan. Life doesn't ask you to know the entire map. It simply asks you to take the next step with trust, knowing that the road will reveal itself as you walk. Every experience, every challenge, and every quiet moment of reflection has been shaping you for this moment. And when you realize that nothing was ever wasted, you will see that this is not just a pause, but the perfect starting point for what's ahead. Every step of your journey, even the ones you still wince at, has been an artisan's stroke on the canvas of who you are right now. The detours you call wastes of time taught you how to read the map of your own intuition. The relationships that collapsed trained your heart to discern the difference between attachment and love. The jobs you hated revealed what your soul refuses to bargain away. The pauses that made you anxious about being left behind quietly built your tolerance for uncertainty, which is the real muscle you need to begin again without fear. Think of how a river learns its course. It doesn't arrive as a straight, obedient line. It bends around rock. It is slowed by fallen trees. It disappears underground only to surface again with a different sound and a different speed. If you looked at a single bend, you'd say the river is obstructed. If you zoom out, you'd see that the bend is its very path. Your life is no different. What you once labeled blockage was the very curvature required to carry you here, with the precise depth and force you now possess. You learned resilience, not in the moments you felt strong, but in the nights you doubted you would make it through. You learned discernment, not by always choosing well, but by suffering the cost of naivety, and finally listening to the quiet warning bells you used to ignore. You learnt patience when nothing responded to your urgency, and life refused to move faster just because you were uncomfortable. You learnt surrender when your plans, carefully architected and defended, dissolved in front of you, and something unexpected, sometimes gentler, sometimes harsh, took their place. Notice how the very traits you now value in yourself were born from conditions you never would have selected. Your empathy came from knowing how it feels to be dismissed. Your discipline came from realizing how expensive laziness really is. Your boundaries grew out of the ache of being overgiven and underseen. Your courage was not a gift. It was forged when comfort could no longer hold you, and the only choices left were to step forward or to collapse. The refinement was not theoretical. It was paid for in days you thought were meaningless, in tears you told no one about, in humiliations that stripped you of pretense and left only what was real. There is a strange perfection in the way chaos tutors us. Consider the seed that breaks before it sprouts. From the outside, it looks like destruction. From the inside, it is the only way life can escape its shell. You too have cracked, and every crack leaked an old identity you no longer needed. What remains is not a failure of strength, but an exposure of essence. That essence is exactly what is needed for the beginning that calls you now. It does not require your masks. It requires your honesty. It does not require your performance. It requires your presence. We underestimate the intelligence of pain. We imagine it only as harm, rarely as instruction. Yet look closer at how pain shaped your values, clarified your priorities, revealed the friendships that were genuine, and compelled you to heal the patterns you once defended. Pain was a ruthless but accurate mirror. It showed you the gap between who you said you were and how you really lived. Without that mirror, you might still be chasing a life that doesn't fit you, still selling yourself to be accepted by a room that cannot hold you, still bargaining away your peace for approval that never satisfies. Even your procrastination was part of the curriculum. It showed you where your fears lived. Fear of judgment, fear of success, fear of leaving others behind, fear of exposing your true capacity. It forced you to confront the stories you told yourself to stay safe. I'm not ready. I'm not worthy. I don't have enough. I need certainty first. Those stories kept you in smaller rooms until the walls closed in, and you recognized that discomfort of staying small had finally outweighed the terror of expansion. That tipping point is not an accident. It's timing. Timing, too, is part of the preparation. Had the right door opened 3 years earlier, you might have walked through it with the same old habits and sabotaged what was meant to free you. Had the right person found you before you learnt to communicate your needs, you might have mistaken intensity for love and repeated another cycle. Had the opportunity appeared before your integrity matured, the weight of it could have crushed you. Your life doesn't withhold to punish, it withholds to align. It waits until your character can carry the blessing without breaking the structure of your soul. The fact that you can now recognize patterns you once missed is proof of preparation. The fact that you can now articulate needs you once swallowed is proof of preparation. The fact that silence doesn't scare you like it used to, that you can pause without panicking, that you can let go without narrating tragedy, is proof of preparation. These are not small shifts. They are tectonic. They mean the person entering the next chapter is not the same one who prayed for it years ago. You are steadier, clearer, less seduced by distractions, less willing to betray yourself for belonging. If you look closely, you will see the invisible hands that have been arranging everything, sometimes with tenderness, sometimes with severity, to move you toward an interior authority that does not shake when your circumstances do. That is the preparation, not just new opportunities, but a new you meeting them. What you call readiness is not about skill alone. It is about alignment. Your life has been aligning you, often by subtraction, stripping away what would have made the new beginning another repetition of the old ending. So here you are, standing at the seam between what has been and what can be, carrying tools you earned the hard way: clarity, patience, self-respect, surrender, courage disguised as gentleness, gentleness disguised as courage. You may still feel the tremor of doubt, but even that is a remnant of an older version of you, a voice that doesn't realize you survived without its constant warnings. Thank it for its service. Notice how quietly confident you've become, not because fate finally smiled, but because you learned to stop fighting the seasons and started listening to what each one was teaching. Every mile behind you was not just distance traveled, it was depth added. And that depth is precisely why now, in this exact place, a new beginning can finally hold. The present moment is the only true place of power, because it is the only place where life actually happens. Everything you have ever experienced, every memory and every dream, exists only as a thought in your mind, yet this moment is alive, breathing, pulsing with reality. So often we exhaust ourselves chasing the future or reliving the past, believing that happiness or meaning is waiting somewhere else. But when you step back, you see that neither the past nor the future has any real substance. The past is nothing more than an echo of what once was, and the future is only a projection of what might be. This moment is the doorway to everything you want, because it is the only place where your choices have power. Many people live as if life will truly begin when a certain condition is met, when they have more money, when they meet the right person, when they achieve some goal. But what they don't realize is that this way of living postpones life indefinitely. It's like holding your breath and waiting for the perfect moment to exhale, not realizing that the act of breathing itself is what sustains you. This moment, no matter how incomplete or imperfect it may seem, is already enough. When you truly see that, you stop rushing and start living. The present is where clarity unfolds, where transformation begins. It is not the weight of the past or the uncertainty of the future that holds you back. It is your resistance to this moment. You cannot create a new beginning while constantly revisiting old wounds or rehearsing all the ways the future might fail. The power to shift your life lies not in rewriting your history or in predicting the future, but in choosing what you will do now. Every great change begins in the present moment, not as some dramatic event, but as a quiet decision to embrace what is and step forward from there. When you slow down enough to fully inhabit this moment, you realize it is not as heavy as your thoughts make it out to be. Most of the suffering we carry is not in the reality of what's happening now, but in the stories we tell ourselves about what has already happened or what might happen next. For example, right now, if you simply focus on your breath or the feeling of being alive, there is nothing wrong. Your mind might tell you 1,000 things are wrong, but those are just thoughts. The present moment itself is always whole. When you connect with that wholeness, even for a second, you realize that you have all the strength you need to start over. Think of nature and how it flows with time. A tree doesn't dwell on the storms it has endured, nor does it stress about the harsh winter ahead. It simply grows where it is, rooted in the now. Its strength comes from this acceptance of what is. We, on the other hand, often weaken ourselves by dwelling too much on regrets or anxieties. But just like that tree, we have the ability to root ourselves in the present, to find stability and peace even when life feels uncertain. And from that stillness, new growth begins naturally. The present moment is where life speaks to you. When you are caught in your mind's chatter about the past or future, you cannot hear the quiet guidance that life offers. You miss the opportunities, the simple joys, the subtle nudges that lead you forward. But when you relax into now, you start to notice things you once overlooked. The warmth in a smile, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the beauty in the simplest moment. These are not distractions. They are the real texture of life. They remind you that life is not something to be chased, but something to be lived. This moment is not accidental. Everything you've experienced has delivered you here. And even if this moment feels small or insignificant, it contains all the potential for the life you are longing for. The first steps of any transformation happen now, often quietly, often without fanfare. It could be as simple as deciding to let go of a burden you've carried for too long, or forgiving yourself for something you didn't know better about. When you choose to be present, you reclaim your power, because you are no longer trapped in a story of what could have been or what might be. To live fully in the present is to recognize that you don't need to have the entire path figured out. You only need to take the next step. Life has a way of revealing itself piece by piece, but you will never see the next piece if your mind is stuck on what's behind you. Every breath, every choice, every action is like a ripple. What you do now creates the current that shapes what's ahead. This is why being here in this moment matters so much more than obsessing over the future. It's important to remember that this moment is not defined by your past. It may carry the echoes of it, but it is not bound by it. Right now you are free to choose differently, to think differently, to act. Your past may have shaped who you are, but it cannot determine what you will become unless you let it. Every new beginning is born in the present, and every transformation starts the moment you decide to inhabit now with your full awareness. There is a deep sense of freedom in realizing that nothing outside of this moment is required for you to begin anew. You do not need to wait for permission, for the stars to align, or for someone else to validate you. Everything you need to take the first step forward exists here and now. The strength, the creativity, the courage, all of it is already within you. When you stop looking outside of this moment for answers, you discover that the present itself is rich with everything you need. Even the mistakes of your past can only be healed in the present. You cannot go back to change them, but you can change your relationship to them now. You can choose to see them not as failures, but as teachers. You can choose to carry wisdom instead of shame, strength instead of regret. This shift happens not in some far-off future when you have figured it all out, but here, in this breath, in this choice, in this moment of acceptance. There's a stillness in this moment that is always available, even when your mind feels like a storm. You might not notice it at first because the noise of your thoughts is loud, but if you slow down, you can feel it. A quiet space beneath the chaos. This is where your real power lives. It's the part of you that remains untouched by failure, unshaken by uncertainty. From this stillness, you can begin again. Not from a place of fear or lack, but from a place of clarity and calm strength. When you fully accept this moment, something extraordinary happens. The fear of the future loses its grip because you realize you don't need to control everything ahead. You only need to meet this moment with presence and intention. And when you do, the future begins to take care of itself. The present moment is not just a place of waiting, it's the birthplace of all that is to come. Every ending is a silent doorway to a new beginning, and you are standing at the threshold whether you realize it or not. The mind loves to dramatize endings as catastrophes, to stamp them with the label for failure or loss, because it is attached to continuity, to what is familiar, to what can be predicted and controlled. Yet life itself is not attached to forms. It is loyal to flow. The form of a relationship, a job, an identity, a dream, even a version of yourself can dissolve, but the current of life keeps moving, inviting you to notice that endings are rarely dead walls. They are more like fogged windows you can wipe clear with presence. When the shape of a chapter collapses, something less visible but more essential is revealed. Your capacity to begin again, not from the ashes of what was, but from the aliveness that never left you. Consider how dusk turns into night. There is a moment where light fades and shadows swallow what you know, and it seems for a while that everything has disappeared. But the night is not emptiness. It is a different kind of seeing. The eyes adjust, the stars appear, the sounds of the world change. Nothing has truly ended. Perception has been invited to evolve. So it is with the endings in your life. They ask you to see differently, to listen for a subtler rhythm, to befriend a stillness you once avoided. What you call loss is often a refinement of attention. You are guided away from the noise so you can hear the deeper music. We cling because we confuse stability with repetition. We want tomorrow to behave like yesterday, even when yesterday was too small for the person you are becoming. The moment an old form becomes too tight, life begins to loosen, sometimes gently, sometimes abruptly. Relationships drift, careers plateau, identities feel like costumes you've outgrown. It's tempting to shove yourself back into them, to pretend nothing has shifted. But the discomfort you feel is intelligence. It is the soul saying, "This is complete. Allow the form to end, but keep the essence." Endings protect you from living a life that has already expired. Sitting at the threshold is uncomfortable because thresholds are undefined. They don't provide the narrative satisfaction of the beginning or the familiarity of the middle. They are liminal. The ground is soft, your next step isn't lit, and your old name echoes faintly behind you. Yet this is the most fertile space you'll ever inhabit. Here you are not required to know, only to notice. You can feel which directions drain you and which ones invite breath. You can experiment without the weight of identity. You are free to ask questions you were not permitted to ask inside the old chapter. Who am I without that role? What do I value when no one is watching? What pace does my life choose when I'm not forcing it to sprint? The grief that rises at an ending is not merely sadness over what's gone. It's also the tremor of a self that knows it's being born into a larger container. Let the grief come. Let it move through your body like a weather system. Tears are not an argument against the ending. They are a ritual of release, the body's way of honoring what served you and clearing space for what will. If you try to bypass that grief with positivity, you carry the old chapter like a ghost into the new one. Allowing yourself to feel is how you cross the threshold clean. There is a humility demanded at the doorway. You cannot drag certainties through it. You cannot bend the future into the shape of the past and expect to be transformed. This is the point where you learn trust, not as a spiritual slogan, but as a lived practice. Trust in what? In the same intelligence that kept your heart beating while you slept, that healed wounds you didn't consciously know how to heal, that aligned you with teachers, lessons, and opportunities at times you couldn't have orchestrated. Trust that this intelligence is not suddenly confused because a chapter ended. Trust that it often removes what you cling to so you can hold what belongs. There's a quiet miracle in letting an ending be an ending without rewriting it 1,000 times in your mind. The need to reinterpret, to justify, to blame, to extract a neat lesson is the mind's way of wresting control from mystery. But mystery is not your enemy. It is the womb of new beginnings. If you can let the ending stand as it is, imperfect, unresolved, human, you create room for the next beginning to arrive without being a reaction to the past. It can be a response to who you truly are now. Notice how the body already understands thresholds. The breath ends and begins in a single gesture. The heart contracts and expands. The day closes and opens. In every cycle, there is a brief pause, a gap where ending and beginning kiss. We rarely rest there because the gap feels like nothingness, and nothingness scares a mind addicted to constant occupation. Yet that pause is where power gathers. That is where intention can be placed, not as a demand, but as a seed. Not I must force this outcome, but I am willing to meet what meets me. Awake. In the space after an ending, life tests what you have truly learned. You may be offered a familiar pattern wrapped in a new costume, a chance to say yes more consciously or to say no where you once surrendered yourself. You may be tempted to recreate the comfort of the past just to feel anchored again. The threshold asks you, will you repeat or will you return to yourself? Either choice is allowed, but only one expands you. What if the doorway is not outside of you at all, but inside? An aperture in your awareness widening to let more of life in. Then the external ending is simply the visible sign of an internal expansion. The person you were could not carry the light you now hold, so the scaffolding cracked. If you see it this way, resentment softens. You are less angry at the door that closed and more curious about the horizon you can finally see without it blocking your view. Every new beginning asks for something in exchange. Perhaps your need to be right. Perhaps the identity built on proving you were worthy. Perhaps the stubborn loyalty to an old dream that belonged to a younger version of you. Endings collect these tolls. They ask you to travel lighter. They ask you to stop building homes on bridges. You don't need to know where the road leads to know that you cannot carry everything. You don't need to know where the road leads to know that you cannot carry everything. The relief that comes when you drop what's heavy is often the first sign you're walking through, not turning back. And if you listen closely, the silence at the threshold isn't empty at all. It's full of invitations, whispered under the noise of your fear, invitations to play again, to risk again, to trust your timing, to honor the wisdom you paid dearly to earn, to be gentle with yourself while you learn a new language of living, to take one honest step without demanding a guarantee for the entire journey, to let the door close softly behind you without needing to wedge it open, to recognize that the threshold is already teaching you how to live inside the new room you're about to enter, by asking you to be present, unarmored, available to what is arriving even now. There is no rush. The rhythm of life cannot be forced. Trust the natural flow. The pressure you feel to hurry, to leap before you've learnt to stand, is not coming from life itself, but from a mind that confuses urgency with importance. Notice how nature never sprints toward fruition. The tree does not demand fruit in winter. The ocean does not apologize for the tide's retreat. Dawn never panics that it's not noon yet. Everything unfolds according to an intelligence deeper than impatience. And you belong to that intelligence. When you try to accelerate what needs incubation, you don't really speed it up. You distort it. You pull the flower open before its petals are ready, and then judge the bloom for being weak. It isn't weak. It was interrupted. Rushing is often a disguised form of fear. Fear that if you don't push, nothing will happen. Fear that if you pause, you will be forgotten. Fear that if you let things come in their own time, they will never come. But the truth is that what is truly aligned with you cannot be stolen by delay. Life isn't a stingy clock that runs out of miracles if you don't grab one now. The right season brings the right thing with it, and not a moment sooner, not a moment later. When you try to force the season, you don't get spring in winter. You get exhaustion. Consider how many mistakes were made not because you were careless, but because you were hurried. How many words were spoken that you didn't mean because you were racing to resolve what needed stillness. How many decisions were born from panic rather than clarity because you couldn't tolerate the waiting. Waiting isn't empty if you know what to do with it. It is the time when roots go deeper, when vision becomes sharper, when the noise settles and you can hear the gentle yes and the firm no. If you rush the waiting, you carry confusion into the future and call it momentum. Trusting the natural flow doesn't mean passivity. It means participating without grasping. It means giving your full effort to what is in front of you while letting go of the hysterical need to control what is beyond you. You still plant, water, tend, and prune. You still show up consistently, wholeheartedly. But you stop yanking the seed out of the soil every morning to check if it's growing. You surrender the timeline while honoring the process. You let life meet your dedication with its own timing, and you respect that timing as wise, even when it confounds your plans. There is a rhythm within you that knows when to move and when to rest, when to speak and when to be silent, when to act boldly and when to observe quietly. You override it when you are addicted to comparison, when you look sideways to measure your pace against someone else's path. The rhythm of your life is tuned to your particular becoming. Someone else's peak might coincide with your valley. Someone else's chapter of visibility might coincide with your chapter of deliberate obscurity. The more you try to match their beat, the more you lose the music that is uniquely yours. Impatience narrows your perception. It makes you see only the absence of what you want, not the quiet presence of all that is preparing you to hold it. It is seductive because it feels like energy, like movement, like you're doing something. But real movement, the kind that doesn't collapse under its own weight, emerges from alignment, not agitation. When you move from alignment, you find that the right people show up without you chasing them, the right opportunities appear without you begging for them, and the right words come without you forcing them. This isn't magic, it's coherence. Let your life breathe. Let your projects breathe. Let your healing breathe. Let your grief breathe. You cannot inhale endlessly without exhaling. You cannot demand constant expansion without allowing contraction. The pulse of the universe is expansion and return, ebb and flow, rise and fall. Honor that rhythm in yourself, and you will suffer less from the illusion that everything must be forward and upward at all times. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop pushing, step back, and allow the deeper intelligence to rearrange the pieces before you step in again. Think. You may find that when you stop rushing, time becomes more generous. When you are fully present, an hour stretches wide enough for true work, real connection, and honest listening. When you are frantic, entire days vanish without substance, swallowed by half attention and scattered effort. Slowness, when chosen consciously, is not stagnation, it is depth. It lets you touch the essence of what you are doing, instead of skimming your life as if it were someone else's summary. Think of all the times you thought you were late, only to discover that the supposed delay spared you from something you weren't ready for, or directed you towards something far better. Think of the relationships that didn't happen when you begged for them to, only to realize that the space in between taught you how to love without abandoning yourself. Think of the work that didn't arrive when you pounded on the door, only to show up later when you could carry it with steadiness instead of frantic ambition. Life wasn't denying you, it was maturing you. Trusting the flow also means trusting yourself to meet what arrives. Anxiety often comes from the fear that you won't be able to handle the moment when it finally comes. So you try to get there early, to rehearse every scenario, to control the variables. But that rehearsal is a poor substitute for presence. Presence is intelligence in action. It equips you in real time with what you need. You don't need to pre-live the future to be ready for it. You need to be awake when it comes. Slow down enough to notice the subtle invitations that rushing tramples. The quiet intuition that says, wait. The soft inner nudge that says, turn here instead. The gentle pull toward rest that your mind labels laziness, even though it's actually a strategic pause. When you honor these signals, you discover that your timing becomes strangely impeccable. You make the call at the moment the other person is finally receptive. You send the proposal when the decision maker is actually looking for someone like you. You take the day off, and an insight arrives that would never have been born under the fluorescent lights of forced productivity. This is not coincidence. It's cooperation with rhythm. The river doesn't argue with gravity. It uses it. You don't need to fight reality to move forward. You can flow with it. Flow is not the absence of effort. It is effort placed in harmony with direction. Instead of swimming upstream to prove you're strong, you learn to read the current and align your stroke. You spend less energy going further. You learn to trust that when the water slows, it's contouring round a bend. When it quickens, it's guiding you through a narrowing. When it stills, it's offering a mirror so you can see yourself clearly before the next rush. There is a dignity in patience that urgency can never touch. It is the dignity of someone who knows that their worth is not pegged to pace, that their life is not a race to be won, that their becoming is not threatened by another person's speed. It is the dignity of someone who has learnt to distinguish between delay and preparation, between silence and absence, between stillness and stuckness. When you move from that dignity, your actions carry weight without force, clarity without noise, presence without performance, defeat without indecision. To mince it, then eventually you discover that what you were chasing by rushing, security, certainty, acceptance, was never delivered by speed. It is delivered by alignment with reality, with your own timing, with the quiet wisdom that keeps saying, breathe, listen, choose, allow, act when it's time, rest when it's not. And trust that nothing truly yours can be missed when you are faithful to the flow that brought you here in the first place. You already possess everything within you to step into what's next. Nothing is missing. It's easy to believe that the next chapter of your life requires something outside of yourself. More knowledge, more confidence, more money, more connections. We are taught to see ourselves as incomplete, as projects that are never enough, until we gather more and more. But the truth is, what you need has always been there, waiting for you to recognize it. Every strength you think you lack is simply dormant, waiting for the moment you decide to trust it. Every skill you imagine is out of reach is already a seed within you, needing only your attention and patience to grow. Life is not asking you to be someone else before you begin. It is asking you to start with who you are, to step forward with what you already carry. You have lived through storms that once made you believe you couldn't go on, and yet you are here. That resilience, that ability to adapt and rise, is not something you can buy or borrow. It is evidence that you already hold the raw material for every new beginning you fear you are unprepared for. Often, the belief that you are missing something is only a story your mind tells to protect you from the discomfort of change. It says you're not ready yet, when the deeper truth is that readiness is not a feeling, but a choice. The moment you decide to trust yourself, you discover that you've been equipped all along. When you look back at your life, notice how many times you started without feeling ready. The first job, the first leap into love, the first time you stood up for yourself. All of these moments were not preceded by absolute confidence. There were moments when you stepped forward despite fear, And only afterward did you realize that courage had been living inside you the entire time. It's the same now. You don't need to wait until you feel perfect or complete. That day will never come. Completion is not a precondition for action. It is a result of it. The world often convinces us that we are lacking because it thrives on comparison. It tells you that someone else is better, faster, more talented, or more worthy. But that's a distraction from the truth. You are not supposed to be them. You are not here to follow their rhythm, their path, or their story. You are here to unfold your own. Every challenge you have faced so far has been shaping you into the person who can walk this path. Even the moments of doubt and the times you felt broken were carving out depth within you, making room for strength, compassion, and clarity to emerge. What you already have is not just experience, but wisdom. Wisdom is not built from successes alone. It is built from failures, from lessons learned the hard way, from seeing what doesn't work and deciding what truly matters. Every heartbreak, every rejection, every mistake was not a subtraction from your worth, but an addition to your character. You may look at those moments and see loss, but life sees refinement essential. The next step in your life doesn't require you to be anyone other than who you are now. It requires honesty. It requires you to stop pretending you're not enough. It requires you to stop waiting for the world to approve before you allow yourself to begin. There is something deeply powerful about recognizing that you are already carrying the tools, the courage, and the spirit for the life you are meant to create. You may not have all the answers yet, but answers are not what start journeys. Questions start journeys. Curiosity, willingness, and faith carry you through them. Think about the times when you've looked outside yourself for permission to move forward. How often did you delay because you believed someone else knew better? How many times did you underestimate the quiet strength that has always been part of you? The truth is, no one can hand you the power you already hold. No one can fill a space inside you that is already whole. You don't need external validation to confirm that your life is ready to bloom. All it takes is for you to claim the truth of your own capacity. When you stand in this awareness, you begin to see that nothing is missing. What you perceive as gaps are often illusions. For instance, you may believe you need more courage, but courage is not something you acquire, it is something you summon. It is the choice to move despite fear. You may believe you need more clarity, but clarity does not always precede action. It emerges from action, from trying, from learning, from stepping into the unknown. You may believe you need more worth, but worth is not earned. It is inherent. You were born with it, and no failure, no rejection, no delay and take it away. You have survived seasons you thought would break you, and each one added to your arsenal of strength. The wisdom of endurance is already etched into your bones. The compassion you carry for others was born from the moments you felt unseen and learned to value what it means to be kind. The creativity you doubt is not something you have to invent. It's the natural expression of your soul. When you give yourself permission to explore without fear of judgment, everything you need to step into the next chapter is already within you. The challenge is not finding it, but believing it. Sometimes life delays certain blessings, not because you lack something, but because you need to realize you already have everything. When you learn to trust yourself in the absence of guarantees, when you act without waiting for all the conditions to be perfect, you unlock a power that has been there all along. This power is not loud or boastful. It's steady, quiet, and deeply rooted. It's the voice inside you that whispers, "You've got this," even when the world shouts otherwise. The illusion of lack is the biggest barrier to new beginnings. You think, "I'll start when I'm more confident, when I have more support, when I know more." But those thoughts are only excuses dressed as logic. The only moment you have is now, and now is enough because you are enough. Every person you admire, every success story you've ever heard, started from a place of imperfection, uncertainty, and fear. What set them apart was not that they had everything, but that they trusted what they did have and took the first step anyway. Your life does not require you to be flawless or to have it all figured out. It requires you to believe that the answers will reveal themselves as you move forward, just as they always have. The map you're looking for is drawn by your own steps. The wisdom you think you're missing comes from the courage to begin. You don't have to wait for permission or for the perfect moment. The moment you decide to see yourself as complete and capable, even with your imperfections, is the moment a new chapter opens effortlessly.